Here we are at the Washington Schoolhouse in Round Pond, Maine, and I'd like to welcome Brenda and Bob Erickson. How did you happen to come to Round Pond?
Well, it's a long story, but before Brenda and I married, I had a very dear friend when I was living in South Berwick, Maine, and he owned Browns Cove. And he and I, as good friends, every weekend would come to Browns Cove and pull the dinghies out of the water and empty the cabins of water and so forth in getting ready for the winter. So I was pretty familiar with Browns Cove, and we would drive into King Row to get a sandwich or a beer, whatever, you know.
Or a beer
or a beer,
sandwich.
maybe another beer. Anyway, that's the way I discovered Round Pond. Now, one year, Craig said, you know, you really ought to look at property here. His name was Craig Cleves. And I said, great. And he showed me the property on Post Office Road where we live now. But back then it was Rural Road 45. And there was no post office. But there was a Marilyn McLuhan for sale sign about the lot. Well, I was single at the time, and I had no interest in investing in real estate. So I went back, and then Brenda and I got together. And my parents lived in Arizona, and my dad passed away, and my mother needed help. So my brother called me and said, look, I need help out here. So I turned to this lovely lady and I said, Brenda, how would you like to move to Arizona? And you have to remember, Brenda lived on one street and had one phone number all of her life.
In Kittery, I'm a Mainer.
In Kittery this was. And I said, how would you like to move to Arizona? And to my surprise, she said, when? So I said, okay, before we go to Arizona, I want to show you a piece of property in heaven. So we drove up to Round Pond, and I took her down Rural Road 43, sorry, you're right. Down 43, and showed her the property, and I said, boy, you know, this is really kind of nice. And she said, I want it. So we actually bought that property, put a down payment on it, on the way out of town that day. So now we move out to Arizona. We're taking care of Mom. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
What year was this?
1985. And the next year, Brenda and I married, and we lived in Arizona, took care of Mom, and then she finally passed away after 7 or 8 years, and we're free to live anywhere we wanted, and of course, Maine is home. So we came back to Rural Road 43, and
Built our house. Don Bourne.
Don Bourne built our house.
It's a local, built our house. So.
And we built the house in 87, 88. So we've been here ever since.
That's wonderful. Where did you live while you were building the house?
Arizona.
Oh.
Don Bourne built it long distance and sent us Polaroid pictures of the house while it was being built.
There was
That's how
no
far
email.
back it
There was
goes.
there wasn't even fax back then, you know. But we did it long distance. And Don Bourne, by the way, is just one fine builder. And he's still here in Round Pond.
Let me just throw a little aside in there. Even before you met Craig Cleves, you came up to Round Pond because your sister's, unfortunately deceased, he died young, first husband, was the grandson of the Bowies who lived in the Chamberlain Bed and Breakfast Event Center. So you brought your sister up to meet visit with Mr.
His
and
grandparents.
Mrs. Bowie. And so we bought the property that actually was part of...
And that was about
part of the plan.
1974 or 5. I mean, that
Yeah.
goes way back when I took my sister up to see her husband's grandparents.
How many houses were on Rural Route 43?
Post Office Road, we call it that now. Yeah.
There were no houses on there.
I'm sorry, there was one. Down at the bottom of the road, there was, and it's still there, a log cabin.
And Becky and Bob True's house
the
was
True's
there.
house was
And I
there.
think Ron and Avis's...
But nothing on the road, it was all on the shore.
yeah, no, Ron and Avis had a house there.
Oh, you're right.
They had a house there, and Carl Monroe had a trailer up above. So we came in, and we were the last of the 3 houses that were built recently from away. But I'm not from away. Some of the locals tell me I am because I'm from
Kittery's
Kittery.
still Maine. It's barely Maine, but it's still
I
Maine.
know. They say it's northern Massachusetts.
That's funny. So how did you get, when I hear the name Cleves, now is that a relative of Jenny Cleves?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Her former husband is Craig Cleves.
And Jenny is a dear friend, too.
And Jenny's a friend of
Yeah.
ours.
And Jenny is very involved in the schoolhouse.
Absolutely.
Yes.
She's the treasurer, I believe, right now, isn't she?
She is.
Yeah, and she's
And a
been part of the
wonderful person.
reclaiming. She is. She's lovely. I know
Yeah.
she does bingo nights here as well.
Oh, does she?
Oh, good.
Or Beano, I guess it is,
It's-
because they use real
yeah,
beans. Right. So Brenda, you do recipe painting. You're pretty well known, certainly locally, for the wonderful calendars that you do of recipe paintings.
Yes, I take your recipe and I illustrate it with your bowls and your spoons and whatever you need in there. Whatever brings the memory of that recipe back to you.
All the
it's
ingredients.
sometimes it's ingredients, and sometimes it's finished
utensils.
product, and sometimes it's a combination. And I write the recipe in pen and ink on the painting. So yeah, I've been doing that for I don't know, 16 years or something like that. And I have a book and calendars, and it's taken me to places I never expected. I'm actually a retired dental hygienist before I got
Oh,
into
for
that.
heaven's sake.
Stumbled into this and just love it. It's a passion.
That's wonderful, and you're obviously very good at it.
Thank you.
If you want to hold up this lovely,
Well, Irv True came to me and said, would you paint this schoolhouse? And I said, absolutely. And so between him and Cynthia, because actually the weather vane was not on when I painted it, but you had the weather vane, and so Cynthia and I emailed back and forth and got the weather vane, I think, the way it's supposed to be. And it was just a pleasure to do.
it's lovely, and it was a very generous gesture on your part. We've made note cards out of it.
Yes.
Certainly these are available for sale in the little shop that we have downstairs.
Yes.
But it's lovely. It's a lovely remembrance. Thank you.
It's a beautiful school, and we thank all of the people involved that have rebuilt this to the point it's at.
Brenda loved doing that painting. She really did.
It's nice when you love it.
Yes,
What you're doing.
yes, yeah.
You're lucky to be
So
doing
although
it.
I paint recipes, I paint other things too.
Right.
And
Obviously,
so it's
yeah.
always fun to take on a different project.
Sure, sure. I know this year your calendar is blueberry recipes.
Yes.
2018, which certainly
Yeah.
I already have mine.
That's good, thank you. Thank you.
Granite Hall store. So, Bob, you actually became interested in the schoolhouse quite a while ago. Is that true, or?
Well, pretty much through Bill Smith and others that we know. And we were very interested in what was going to happen to it. And certainly the story behind it about how they were going to have to tear it down and burn it because it had just been unoccupied for so long. And to know that it was being restored was really neat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that you have also written a lovely poem.
Thank you.
When did you write that?
May of 2010,
Okay.
2010.
So pre-restoration, I should know my facts. here,
Middle.
but middle of restoration. Okay.
Probably the cupola wasn't on at that time.
Okay. We would love it if you wanted to read some or all of it.
All right, great. I may have to borrow my wife's glasses to do it. But it was Bill Smith who came to me and asked if I would consider it. And it was such an honor, and I had to really think about it.
You bet.
Because how do you write a poem about a school, you know? And I really, poetry is a very unique way of expression. And you need to have not only the knowledge of what you're writing, but also there's a almost spiritual aspect to it, especially when you're dealing with rhyme. And I've always, for some reason, been able to do things in rhyme. So that's very much a part of this as far as I'm concerned. But if you'd like, I'd be glad to read. And if it gets too long and too old, just shut me off.
Okay, great, thank you.
Oh, that helps. It's called The View from the Washington School. I was born in the year 1885. Hard to believe I'm still alive. A schoolhouse who has seen it all, who welcomed the children every fall. I am strong with heavy hewn beams to carry the load of parents' dreams, of teaching the young who are so fond of living in a village called Round Pond. I saw them all come and go, harboring and nurturing, you know. Through the years, good and bad, I was the haven they knew they had. Some good years before World War II, not too many pupils left, but a few who still tell the stories about me, about who I was, am, and want to be. All we must do is look around. The gray hairs can surely be found. They are neighbors right next door. Just ask them. They will tell us more. Lehman, Pryor, Poland, and Crook, Wilson and Smith could write a book. Cunningham, Osier, Sawyer, just a few. Layler, Eliot, Fawcett, and maybe you. The teachers were my life, my blood. Selfless givers who did all they could to teach the 3 R's and more, preparing us for what was in store. Art and music were always at hand. The Weatherbees formed the rhythm band. Geography and English were also taught, and the medal of character was ever wrought. Thanks, Mrs. Francis, Mrs. Clifford, Mr. Yates. You have all found peace in heaven's gates. Recently we lost our beloved Thelma Baker. That wonderful teacher has met her maker. I love to see the kids have fun. At recess, they all went out to run. In the woods, they played hide and seek, and the boys played mumbly peg every week. The president said the war was done. You could hear the bells saying that we had won. Mr. Truman spoke from the Capitol dome. Thank God we would see our boys come home. In 1953, my beautiful doors were closed. No one knew what hardship that posed. No laughing, no screaming, no classes, just blaring silence as each day passes. Empty and alone were true disasters when along came a fellow, George Masters. I was used as a workshop, and that was okay, since I had workers with me every day. Even that had to come to a bitter end. No longer a school, and I couldn't pretend. I became a warehouse for years and years, an era lost among my solitary fears. In '07, the fireman said it was my turn to train the men and that I was to burn. What horror to think of going up in flame with nothing left but a remembered name. One day along came the wonderful 3, Smith, Mayer, and Jansen, to love and save me. Later came 2, Wright and Cleaves. All of them had rolled up their sleeves. Morton, Herndon, Hickson, and Coombs. Dolan also worked to brighten my rooms. Sand and paint, ladders, hammers, and nails, all the junk was thrown out in great big pails. In June, please come and look at me. I am a happy new schoolhouse, you see. My children are back, and parents will go. Thank you, Round Pond. Thank you so.
Very nice. Thank you. It's a lovely story.
It was very hard to do because Bill asked me to do this, and I started thinking, how in the world do you write a poem about a house, a schoolhouse, you know? And then it dawned on me, though, I am the house.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for coming today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely.
And thank you for all you do for the schoolhouse. We do shows throughout the state, and we'll tell people we're from Round Pond, and more than once people say, "Is that where that schoolhouse is?" And it's really nice to brag about it.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. A lot of people put a lot of hard work in.
Yes.
Oh, my
Sure.
goodness sakes, what's happened is wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.